You're listening to High School Sports Talk on ESPN Radio, presented by VirginiaPreps.com. Now let's get back to your hosts, Matt Hatfield and the coach, Ed Young.
Back here on the program, we have a special guest. He is the head football coach of the Nansemond-Suffok Academy Saints, and we say good morning to Coach Mike Biehl. Coach, how's your summer going so far?
Going great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. And let's start before we get into all your key players and the outlook for the squad. A lot of people know it looked like you were taking another job in the area at First Colonial in the springtime. You end up back at Nansemond-Suffok Academy. Sort of refresh the listeners on what happened and what brought you back to the Saints, where the things looking pretty good this year.
Absolutely. And it's one of those deals. Coaching is just one of those professions that, you got to explore opportunities. You don't exactly know when or where they're going to happen. And at the end of the day, NSA was the right place for me, and that's how the whole deal played out. And just like you said, we've got a great squad coming back, filled with guys that have been in the program for 3 years now, mixed in with some new faces that I think people are going to get familiar with by the end of the year. And the outlook is good. We've had a great off season. We've had more participation in the weight room since I've been here, and I think that's really going to pay dividends come the middle of the season when we really need it to.
Hey, Mike, Ed Young here. I guess I'm going to tell you congrats on staying. Of course, you're in Suffolk where I'm at. I thought maybe, I didn't read it in the papers, I just thought maybe you demanded that $8 million contract, and they said, no, we can't do that.
My wife would be really happy if that's how it played out. But, no, just exactly what I said before. Just circumstances being what they are, NSA is a great place and happen to be the best place for me at this point right now. So that's where I'm at.
Hey, Mike, do us a favor. Let's go back to your high school days where you're a pretty doggone good player yourself. Let's talk about where you played at high school and then from that point all the way up to the Nansemond-Suffok Academy job.
Sure, I appreciate that. So I went to Salem High School, played for Coach Tim O'Reilly for my first 3 years, and then Coach Beatty came in my senior year and brought the spread in with him. It was one of the first times the 757 really saw, a run and shoot or a run and gun or whatever you want to call spread offense. Had a lot of success, really good players to throw the ball to, and broke a bunch of records. And I got a chance to go from Salem to Iona College, really small Division I AA school. Played quarterback there, started over 20 games over 4 years. Got hired immediately after graduating at Iona as quarterbacks coach. I stayed one spring, got the opportunity to go to Northern Illinois University as a graduate assistant. Right after that first season there, our head coach retired, but then I got another opportunity to go to Kent State University for 3 years as a graduate assistant. Moved back to Virginia Beach, coached 1 year with Kellam High School with Chris DeWitt and his staff while I was a teaching assistant at Tallwood. Right at the end of that year, John Keppel got the job at Tallwood, and I got a full-time teaching job there. And it kind of timed up perfectly for me to get a job there in the building. And that's where I stayed for the next 5 years, doing really just a little bit of everything. I heard Carlos Martinez was on the show last week, and he gave a lot of credit to John, and I got to do the same. He put some responsibilities on my plate early on and just let it grow and grow and grow. And without that experience that he gave me, I wouldn't be in this position. So anyway, I was there for a total of 6 years before having the opportunity to interview for an NSA head coaching job. And, not knowing a whole lot about private school football or NSA, I was blown away when I stepped on campus. I was blown away by the people who they have in their community, and that's where I'm at today.
You mentioned, Mike, you did have a little bit of influence under Chris Beatty with that spread. Sure. Talk a little bit about his impact on your development. And you said you went to Northern Illinois as a coach. Was that under Coach Beatty, or he was there too?
Yes, he was there too. Yes, small world. Huge influence on myself as a person and a coach. In terms of his coaching philosophy, the biggest thing that I think I got from Coach Beatty is that you got to be yourself. You can't be anybody but yourself, because as a player at any level, when you try to be something you're not, the players you're trying to affect the most see right through it. And he was somebody right off the bat that I could tell He was going to be 100% honest, tell us what we needed to hear. And on top of that, he had a great scheme that he knew inside and out. And that's something that has affected me today. You got to understand exactly what you're trying to get across. And you got to do it in the way that you're comfortable doing. That's being yourself. He was the running backs coach at Northern Illinois, and it's just funny how things work out. They had a guy lined up for a GA job, and something happened where he couldn't get into school. He called me on a Thursday, said, "You need to be up here by Sunday. You're going to interview for this job and get it." So I said, "All right, let's do it." And everything else just kind of fell into place.
I think he's now offensive coordinator. Is it University of Maryland?
He's at Maryland, yeah.
Yeah, he's the co-coordinator at Maryland, and gosh, I tell people, you got to really step back and think about whether you want to get into college coaching, because he's a great example of you got to be willing and ready to go wherever, whenever. And luckily, he's at a place now where I think he's going to put some roots down and really be there for a while because he loved it there. But yeah, he's been a great influence on me for sure.
Now, talking about influence, if I'm not mistaken, was your dad once a principal in the Beach system?
He was a principal at Kellam High School for 20 years. And before that, he was a head football coach, head wrestling coach at Bayside High School for about 6 or 7 years. So, yeah.
All right, so obviously strong influence there, but he, as principal, did not ever hire you as a coach. He wasn't. That was a different era. He was not bringing you on as one of his coaches.
It's funny you say that. I loved Kellam High School. Obviously, with him being there for as long as he was, they're like family to me. When he got that job, I was just getting into middle school. So I've known those coaches, some of the teachers that have been there for 20-plus years. But because he was the principal, I couldn't get hired. I couldn't get hired on as anything but a volunteer because it would have been nepotism.
Ah, okay.
So got to play those cards, man.
Talking with Mike Biehl. He's the son of longtime area administrator, principal, and coach Bruce Biehl, and he's also the head football coach of Nansemond-Suffolk Academy, here with us on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. And, Coach, I want to get into some of your players here. And you got a youngster we got coming up later on in the show, Sekou Wilson of Granby, about his youngsters. Katron Evans, who's got multiple offers, and you got one in Griffin, I believe it's Dugan, rising sophomore lineman who's impressed a lot of coaches. He's got UVA and Virginia Tech, does he not?
Yes, he does. Griffin Duggan is a 6'5", 270-pound left tackle, and he was somebody right off the bat. We knew we were going to be excited about having gotten the chance to watch him and JV and some of the things he can do on the basketball court. He's got a rare size and quickness ability that people gravitate towards, and there's no surprise that he has those offers, and I think he's only going to get better, and those offers are going to grow from there.
Give us some other names to watch out for, offensive side of the ball, and moving over to the defense, some key players that could make an impact for you this year.
I think we've got a core group of older guys mixed, like I said, with some younger guys. Aaron Knight is a two-time All-State receiver for us. He's 6 feet, 190, real physical, turns into a running back after the catch. He's somebody that we're going to really lean on in a bunch of different ways. George Pettaway is a name that some people are familiar with in basketball. He's got a couple of Division I offers in basketball as a rising sophomore, but he's one of the most explosive players in this area. He can take it the distance from anywhere, whether it's putting his foot in the ground, running a trap right between the tackles, or catching a ball out of the backfield. He's a guy that I think a lot of people are going to know what his name is and what he's about by the end of the year. Ben Koppelman's another one. He's basically the Thunder to Georgia's Lightning, hard-nosed runner, does a little bit of everything, great utility player. Zach Morris is an all-state receiver coming back who had 15 touchdowns last year in the slot. And then Ian McInerney is a kid who's stepping in at quarterback for the first time who we're really excited about. He's just gotten better and better throughout the spring. Like you said, on the other side of the ball, Josh Hoyster comes back to be our middle linebacker. He had over 120 tackles last year. And he's really going to be the focal point to our defense. I think he's going to get us in the right spots and really direct us and be that hammer that we need him to be in the middle.
And real quickly, give us the scrimmages you got and then game one for you. Who is it, where you at, and the date, if you can.
So we are going down to Edenton and playing in their jamboree. This will be the third year we've done that.
Oh,
really
nice.
Good competition for us because we get to see a little bit of everything in terms of schematics. And the competition level is really good. So that'll be our first test. That'll be August 10th like I said, down in Edenton. And actually, I'm glad you brought this up because we had some things kind of fall under our feet a little bit, and we're looking for a scrimmage on the 17th. We had a home scrimmage set up, but you know how it goes this time of year. Some people had some different circumstances come up. So we're kind of looking for that date to be filled, and hopefully it will be. And then week 1 is the 24th. We've got North Cross coming into town. That's going to be a big one for us.
Yeah, North Cross has had a program that's had a lot of success over the years, so that should be a good litmus test for you guys out of the gate, I would think.
Yeah, Stephen Alexander does a great job. He's always got those guys ready to play. We've had a couple barn burners. The first year I was there, you know, it was a back and forth battle, no defense being played at all, like a pinball machine. And then they got the better of us when we went to Roanoke last year. So it's going to be a good one. We're looking forward to that.
Mike, I want to ask you, being a very good high school player in your own right, and then, of course, you coached on the college level. You did, you know, obviously some recruiting, if not off campus, definitely on campus. And now you've coached public school, private school. Is there a big difference between public school football, private school? And I preface this by saying Matt and I talked earlier about a couple private schools in the area losing out on players that they have to drop down to 8-man football, just don't have numbers. Is that maybe the big thing about private school? Depth, a lot more kids play both ways, private than public. What's your opinion?
I think the biggest difference between public school football and private school football is that in public school, when I was at Tallwood, even when I was at Kellum, you've got a lot of student athletes involved with football who see that as a vehicle to go somewhere else. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. A lot of kids are in different situations that view this sport as a way for them to go somewhere maybe they wouldn't be able to go. In private school, I think that's the minority thinking. Whereas most of the kids that you're coaching in private school, they're going to have academically the ability to go do some different things after high school, and football is just a part of their social life in what they do in school. And that's a big difference because there's a level of intensity that you're talking about when that's your motivation. But in terms of the kids are kids. Everybody's asked me what the biggest difference is between public and private, and when you get right down to it, teenagers are teenagers. They care about a lot of the same things, whether they come from this background or that background. So when it comes down to coaching, that's not that different at all. But I think the motivation behind playing sometimes is a lot different.
And of course, in wrapping this up, your philosophy on playing this, I always ask football coaches, a lot of kids playing two-way. And you would think, well, you want to put your best athletes on the field as much as possible, but the longer they're out there, the risk of injury because of the nature of football. But I understand you've got to, me in basketball, my best players out there because they're playing offense and defense regardless. And if they don't play one end of the floor, I can always substitute freely, where football's a little different. Your philosophy on kids playing two-way? I think it's funny because I talked to a lot of guys that I played with back in the day about this, and it's one of those things that if you were a skilled kid, if you were a receiver, DB, you kind of knew going into it, you're just not going to leave the field. If you're one of the best skill athletes, that's just how it's going to be. And I think that's still similar today. I think where it gets dicey is when you've got a lot of front seven guys going both ways. And I'm going to tell you what, that was the biggest difference for us last year between going 4-6 versus 6-4. We had way more of a rotation in that front seven to where, we don't have every single offensive lineman getting snaps on the defensive side of the ball and vice versa. So I think when you start talking about the bigger athletes on the field, that's really who gets affected the most. Whereas those skill guys, just like you said, they're used to playing basketball. They're used to playing sports in which they don't leave the field. So it's a little easier for them to get acclimated to not leaving the field in football minus the physical part of it. So for us and a lot of other schools, that is definitely a huge factor. Can you be deep enough to rotate guys in that front seven and be fresh by the fourth quarter? And I can tell you from firsthand experience, it helped us a lot for sure.
Well, a little less than a month away from the opener for the Nansemond-Suffok Academy Saints, August 24th to take on North Cross. Coach, thank you so much for the time this morning, and we'll be watching what you guys do this year.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely.
Good luck to you, Mike.
All right.
That is Mike Biehl, head football coach of Nansemond-Suffok Academy, with us this morning here on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com. Doing good things over there with the Saints of NSA. Also, looking to make a nice run this year. They made the playoffs last season. The Granby Comets. Sekou Wilson's got a big-time lineman up front, and he's got some solid quality pieces on both sides of the ball. We'll get into that and how things are looking in the Eastern District, which I feel is going to be as improved as any district around. It's coming your way next on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.